So we've talked this morning, since this morning, we have pretty much had conversations around the future. We have had conversations around what should happen, what is happening. I'm going to basically talk about really two things. Firstly, I'm going to talk about stories, very different from data or, for that matter, a heavy emphasis on digital. So I'm just going to talk about stories, and I'm also going to talk about stuff that has actually happened, so actual work that has been done, and hopefully, if we have time, we'll show a little bit of that as well. All right, so let's get going. Hopefully, our technology will work. So as I said, I want to talk about stories. You know, India as a country produces the most number of motion pictures, as you know. We are all a nation, you know, more than 1 billion people mad about stories and storytelling, both from mythology and others. But there's a deep truth in there around stories and people, and I'm just going to quickly dive into that. May you live in interesting times sounds a little bit like a benediction. Actually, I'm told it's an old Chinese curse. So, and I found it apt because we have, over the last 15 years, we've been living in interesting times where practically every assumption we have all had has been continually changing, and which has been pretty dramatic in terms of the impact that has had. So all the stuff, including the doyen of marketing, Philip Kotler himself, comes out and said, actually, what I wrote a few years ago seems to be needing a massive rewrite at this point in time and may not be completely relevant. Fantastic stuff. So for all marketers and technologists who are around, I just wanted to kind of quickly dive in. I will not state the obvious. As I said, around emerging trends, we heard a little bit about people in Korea who shop from the subway. They just point their phones at stuff and they are able to shop. You have supermarkets which, instead of having milk cartons and detergents on their aisles, have LCD screens, which people choose from. You have also started noticing that not only do people have a mobile phone with them all the time, you also have started seeing two different screens being at the same time. People watch their television with a tablet or their mobile in hand, and there are continuous usage going on between both of those devices, and that's a massive trend by itself, which is out there. No surprises at all, on that one. So what used to be a very linear journey and made life relatively easy for marketers, has become quite complex. Now, why this was easy and important is because the primary thrust of most of our marketing work in the past used to be on moments of truth, and you were able to place your moments of truth, typically 2 or 3 of them, through that entire life cycle, and you will be able to position where it happens, what it is intended to do, and consequently be, quote unquote, in control of the entire experience that the customer needs to have. No longer, because nowadays it looks a little bit like that. So how exactly do you place your moments of truth in those pictures? And most importantly, the other piece which has happened is deeply deeply Republican, if you were to kind of think of it, because the balance of power between people and brands has fundamentally turned on its head. And at this point in time, you have people, individually as well as in groups, who wield disproportionate amount of power over brands in terms of the messaging and the influence that they could carry, both positive and at times not so positive. So for those of you who remember the United Broke My Guitar saga on YouTube, is a classic reminder and is a classic example. And every day there are little tragedies which get played out. So every time you moan and you crib in Twitter sphere or Facebook, there is someone, one of your friends or someone else who chances upon you, who's probably basing a buying decision based on that. And there's an entire story kind of being played out. What I find most interesting about digital and the changes that digital has brought about is not digital itself, but the fact that it has actually changed consumer behavior. You and I, as people, behave differently today. That's the most profound change which it brings about. How it brought about is frankly secondary. It plays a role, but it is secondary. What it has done to us as individuals is the important part of it. And there are deep implications there. One is the whole always-on part of it is pretty dramatic, as is the tribal nature in us, which has come to the fore. Every time we buy or base major buying decisions on something that is rated 5-star as against a 3-star, is pretty profound. If you think of it, the 2,000 people who rated that particular product 5-star, you know none of them. You don't even know if they are like you, if they have the same background, do you share anything, Do they have the same needs as you have? You have no idea as to what they did and why they rated it. Maybe a little bit of the why. But you are basing a significant buying decision on the back of that, which is a very deep tribal instinct which wasn't coming to the fore till now. And it's a pretty big change with social implications as well. And obviously, every generation is even more digital native than where we are. Now, why is this relevant? Because at the end of the day, what we are talking about are people. And the moment we start talking about people, we are talking about people who feel, who have emotions, who think. And this is where our biggest liberation as marketers exists. Because after all, you're still talking about people. You're not talking about tweets and like buttons and Facebook and whatever else. You're talking about real people with real emotions. And there are some truisms which continue to exist in our life. And the truism that we use a whole lot at SapientNitro is that around storyscaping and storytelling, which is what pretty much I'll cover up. And hopefully you'll find it interesting as well. So storytelling, old-fashioned art, we learned it at the knees of our respective grandparents. Fantastic. And as advertisers, for a very, very long time, we have leveraged the power of stories. And at certain points in time, we have pretty much, kind of ridden on the back of those as well. So this Force commercial, which was done by Volkswagen last year, which went all the way to the top 5 through the year, is relevant not only because it's a nice commercial, but it also shows the power of Star Wars and the ingrained intelligence that we carry, many thousands of us, where each character means something to us, and we are able to use each of those characters to a telling effect in order to do the story on our behalf. And that's another example. And at other times, we create, like the Happiness Factory for Coke, which we had done. And that's because stories are hardwired in our mind. That's truth. There's no, no doubt about that. And consequently, if you're able to use stories in order to lay a set of messages, you help people find it particularly easy to find the patterns, match the messages, quickly, consume them, and you probably have made a massive impact in that whole, whole storyline, which is a really big aspect of it. There's obviously a ton of theory. For those of you who are students of literature, there's a ton of theory around stories. There are essentially 7 basic types of plots. There are 10 kinds of emotions which stories typically try to play on. So behind the art, there's a lot of science out there. But that's not the point. Because these two, Love Actually and Mr. Cruise's very famous magnum opus, are actually the same story. It's a love story. It's plain and simple as that. The story itself is important, but storytelling, storyscaping becomes that much more important because that's where you're conveying your message. Boy Meets Girl is not the message as a marketer we are interested in. What we're more interested in is, in the saga of Boy Meets Girl, how does our story, our brand, our message, and the product's persona find its place? And that's that's pretty much the whole piece. And I'm going to just quickly give you an example of a specific piece. So what's special about ice cream? Nothing really. It's another commodity. You use it 4 or 5 months in this country, fewer in a year in other countries. Kids seem to love it. We love it once in a while. But when you think about it and when you start diving in and looking even at raw data, you realize actually a whole lot rides on a simple product, and ice cream makes you happy. Happiness is a very deep-rooted, very primal human emotion. There are tons of books on it. How do you be happy? How do you stay happy? And there are tons of songs and lyrics and literature, everything centered around happiness. Now, the interesting part is, so the ice cream, happiness, fantastic. Think of a brand. So you have walls in this whole conversation. The challenge is happiness, as deep-rooted as it is, since it is deep-rooted and since it is so inside us, is not a new idea. So how do you drive activation? For marketers are forever interested in activation and ROI. And this is the whole conversation. We'll talk about 500% ROI, and we'll talk about some serious activation. So how do you drive activation using what essentially is an old idea or an old notion? And in fact, it's an emotion. What do we do with happiness? So we looked at life. And we said, OK, if you look at the ups and downs of life, all the different scenarios around life, there are obviously enough stresses that we all live and carry. We said, let's sprinkle some happiness at every point. Let's just do that. That's it. there's not a whole lot we can do. Let's be humble. But you can definitely do a little bit in terms of sprinkling a little bit of happiness out there. So the plan is brilliantly simple. The whole idea is let's simply deliver millions of smiles. Let's share happiness every day. Just share smiles, share happiness. Let's not try and re-engineer people's lives. Just do that, and we will all be kind of nice and dandy. And that's what we went about doing. The program started getting called Share Happy. So quite literally, behind every art lies a lot of science. This is a proven thing, and I distinctly believe in it. So there's a science behind this too, science of smile catching. And then we just went ballistic. We had smiles on Facebook. We had smiles in all kinds of places, happy places, stores. While you were shopping, while you were on the go, it was everywhere. It was low tech. It was even high tech. We actually invented a smile recognition machine. It's a machine which recognizes your smile and gives you your choice of ice cream or even a free ice cream if you choose to. And this whole combination of all the stuff that we're doing, we're essentially telling a very simple story. And interestingly, this story has outcomes that can be measured in numbers. So you can monetize your fan base. You can count it in terms of TV impressions. And most important, and probably the acid test in the way I look at it, it actually makes you money. This is not just something which is pretty and good to look at, but it actually makes you money. You can actually sell ice creams. It looks like a vending machine. You can actually dispense ice creams. You know who your exact customer who's buying from you, and so on and so forth, which is fantastic. So start with the story. This is where you kind of end up. And of course, yeah, we are all very grateful. It got us a few Golden Lions at Cannes as well, year before last. Fantastic. We're very happy with that. And as I said, behind every art lies a little bit of science. So there's a little bit of science out there. There are still 5 steps. I'll give you those. Understanding the experience space. Simple truism, again, as I said, I'm a student of human behavior in a very big way. We learn far more from experiences than we learn even from stories. And you'll remember that as a child, when you first touched the heater, you probably learned that lesson much faster than the times your mom asked you not to do that very act. And it's exactly that. You learn far more from experiences. So look for the experience and start from the experiences. Find yourself an organizing idea, the core story. In the Share Happy story, sharing happiness is the organizing idea. Is the equivalent of boy meets girl. What's the story? What's the organizing idea? And you just find that without this, you cannot make progress. If there is one thing you have to take out of these 25 minutes you're going to spend with me, please take this one away. Without an organizing idea, you may as well not try. You're going to essentially have a lot of pretty-looking crap. So keep the story simple, have the organizing idea, keep the story simple. The experience is up for you to decide. As we said, as we discovered, the storytelling and how you embellish the story, whether you make it a major thriller or whether you make it a mushy love story is entirely up to us. We can figure that out. But figure out what the organizing idea is. Storyscaping, slightly different from storytelling. And look at it this way. There are different levels of immersion, actually. Think of Harry Potter. I read the Harry Potter book. Interesting, liked it. Completely different magical world which you can imagine. Oh, and then I watched the movie that got made of that book. Gave me a different set of perspectives, a very, very different set of layers of moments that come out of that. Oh, and then I did play in the Harry Potter game, which was very visually evocative. I felt like I was the one who was dodging all of those death blasts and all the sorcerer's chants which were going along. Till I walk into the Harry Potter theme park, and now I'm completely submerged in it. I'm living in a world of make-believe, in a world of Harry Potter. I'm experiencing everything. And you have layer after layer after layer, opportunities. No reason why you should limit your storytelling to quite literally telling when you actually can do storyscaping. So do some storyscaping, apply some systems thinking, join the blocks, have some fun, apply a little gamification. Depends on how much you want to do that. When we were working with Sprite, for example, here in India, and one of the thoughts was to just leverage and excite the social sphere. And instead of merely trying to do it as a singular piece, we said, why not play with it a little bit? And quite literally, why not play with the nation's obsession with cricket? And we created a campaign called CrickWit, which, again, is a much awarded piece. And the whole story is it simply combines tweets with the game of cricket. The more you get retweets, the more runs you score. Excellent. The quality of your tweets automatically start changing because you're looking for retweets. You're looking to score runs. And what came out of it was actually a treasure trove of 3 different genres of fiction. One turned out into a comic, another turned out into history, because there were snippets which were coming out from history lessons, and the third was essentially pushing the brand identity of Sprite. And Sprite just happened to be there. All they did is facilitated this as a platform. Fantastic play on gamification. So do a little bit of that. And probably most importantly, never ever stop the storytelling. Always use a comma. This is where user-generated content kicks in. There was a little bit of a conversation around that earlier in the day. There are 2 Indias, actually, when it comes to user-generated content. There is an India sitting in tier 2 and tier 3 cities and towns which actively participates in content generation, content production. And then there are most of us, myself definitely included, who live in slightly bigger cities. Our inhibitions are a little bit higher. We are net consumers of content and not producers of content. But there's a ton of opportunity which is sitting out there in terms of how you expand your story and how you play with that. Similar example which we did with another brand, and this one was, this is a very old British brand, started in 1886. It's been a market leader. It's all about betting. It's called Ladbrokes. In the last 3 years, it lost its way completely, especially in the onslaught of online betting, party poker, and all of that. As you know, those guys were outlawed practically every other part of the world other than in the United Kingdom, so they did really well there. But poor Ladbrokes was getting completely hammered. And when we started working with them, our organizing idea was around sports and excitement, not about betting. It was not about money. It was not about trading. It was none of that. But it was about sports and excitement. Here's a nation of people who are crazy about sport, who go in and watch the same team play every, once or twice, every other week, pretty much on an ongoing basis. And they cheer about it. They're completely immersed in it. Play with that and use their excitement. And once you play with it, you get really, really, really nice things. And with that as the organizing idea, you had a very, very different orientation. And we'll see a little bit of that. So just to kind of quickly recap for you, 5 steps to having a really, really good ROI. And by the way, the piece which I'm going to hopefully be able to show you right after this around Ladbrokes, 5x ROI on the investment which was made in a reasonably short period of time. 5 things: experience, focus on the experience space, ensure that you have an organizing idea, as I said, most important. Storyscaping, not just storytelling, have some fun, do some gamification and systems thinking, and most importantly, keep the story going. There may always be a sequel. Learn from the Hollywood and Bollywood directors. There's always a Jism 2 and a Jism 3 for those of you who are interesting-minded, and a Dawn 2, those who are like thrillers. So you always want to leave room for that. Because at the end of the day, the key point is it's not Facebook, it's not Twitter, it's not Foursquare, it's not none of these particular platforms. It's actually all of it. It's the kitchen sink pretty much. Because what you're really looking after is this guy who's your new consumer who has many faces. He's doing different things. It's actually many personalities rolled into one. And you cannot actually pigeonhole into one. And he's always on. Offline is forever online at this point in time. Real is virtual. You don't know where the lines actually are, and they completely get blurred. In this world, what you are left with, you have a consumer, you have a brand, and you have a set of things which are floating around and help the brand and the consumer talk amongst themselves. How you play with those, how you take advantage of the moments out there is the trick. And I'm back to where I started it from. You have to completely play with where the moments are and how you leverage them. And once you're able to do that, it could be ideas, it could be campaigns, it could be platforms, whatever. Find your mojo and what the story is. And once you're able to do that, you're able to get somewhere with that whole thing. Because as I said, it's about the consumer. So I'll quickly close. There's a very short, 1.5-minute video which we'll play, and we should be, hopefully I'll have a little bit of time for questions. Fantastic?
When SapientNitro started working with Britain's favourite bookmaker, the marketplace was rapidly changing. New rules about TV advertising had changed the competitive landscape. Ladbrokes was losing ground in retail, and online betting was on the up. The traditional focus on ruling the high street was no longer enough. Something radical had to happen, and so began an incredible journey. This went far beyond the usual campaigns and applications. It amounted to a complete transformation of the way Ladbrokes runs its business. Our overall strategy put the customer at the center of everything. This called for technology that was innovative, fast, intuitive, and always on. Over the next 3 years, we delivered a portfolio of projects. Some consumer-facing, some purely technical, but all adding up to a new level of customer engagement. Ladbrokes knew younger customers demanded a different betting experience. So our first step, build a better way to trade. The old manual system was slow and prone to human error. We built a new trading platform for Ladbrokes, allowing traders to trade 4 times the number of events as before and generating 10,000 price changes per minute. Next, we transformed the customer experience with a slick new website, combining up-to-the-second betting opportunities with innovative search, e-commerce, and personalization features. It's smart, exhilarating, and consistent across digital channels. Our research showed that the more excited a fan is about something, the more likely they are to bet on it. So our e-commerce platform put customers closer to the feeling of live events. They can now place bets however, whenever, and wherever they like. In parallel, we worked with Ladbrokes to redefine the brand. We made it stand out with an emotional proposition: excitement. Game on. This organizing idea acts as a filter for everything, from recruitment to technology, products to advertising. Our campaign uses the infectiously enthusiastic Italian football commentator Tiziana Crudeli to offer live odds during sporting events and position Ladbrokes at the cutting edge of betting. This provided new energy and focus, boosting brand awareness and use despite a smaller share of voice. Ladbrokes has hit the big time, with new digital customers up 86% year on year, sizable growth in mobile, 500% ROI on advertising, and the highest number of in-play betting opportunities in the industry. And there's more social buzz around the brand than William Hill and Bet365 put together. Starting out as technology strategy partners, our relationship has grown to cover all aspects of brand activity. We've delivered something exciting at every step, helping Ladbrokes maximize every opportunity. Together, we've transformed an established retail-reliant betting chain into an industry leader by redefining how they connect with consumers through technology, new products, customer experience, brand and retail marketing. And our incredible journey has only just begun. Game on!
So my parting thoughts is that's your job. If you have to take away something, weave a web of experiences, do the storyscaping, you're home.